Hey there, yo folks. I'm Sean the Modern Yeoman, and I want you to take a look at this. I only planted these pumpkin seeds maybe 5 or 6 days ago, and now each one of these pumpkin pits has produced at least a couple of these seeds. Frankly, I'm a little surprised at how quickly everything has popped up. A lot of these seedlings still have the pumpkin seed shells hanging on to them. It's kind of funny how they look. I think it's fair to say that this pumpkin pit method that I learned from a David the Good video, I'll include the link above my left shoulder here, is very successful. You might remember that this ground that I put these pumpkin pits in is just really bad stuff. It's really kind of nasty, thick, hard clay, but I put these pits in. Each one is maybe 1 foot to 2 feet deep. I filled it with some of our kitchen compost, and then I put the finished compost on top of it, stuck the pumpkin seeds on top of it, and look at them go. It didn't take them long to sprout out. And as much as I like to highlight the successes on this channel, I think it's important and honest to show you guys where things haven't gone according to plan. The failures, the setbacks. I know I spent an episode, I think it was 2 episodes ago, talking about recognizing the victories in your life and in your homesteads. But I think when you do experience things that don't go according to plan, it's important to learn from them and hopefully grow from those experiences. So, as a counterpoint to our Celebrate Your Victories video, I did want to make a Learn from Your Setbacks video. What's the setback in this particular case? Well, our greens beds. Now, before I show you the greens beds and why we consider them to be somewhat of a failed experiment, I think it's important to reiterate to you how successful we think the main garden is, the kitchen garden. As you know, I've talked about it quite a few times. This garden was on the brink of disaster just a few weeks ago. It looked a lot like the greens beds do now, but through a lot of focus on fertilization and soil improvement, mulching, things like that, it's fair to say we really turned this main kitchen garden around. It's definitely a success. The tomato plants are luscious and kicking out fruit. We've got several pepper plants that have popped out peppers. The potato box, I've held up the potatoes here. This is a jungle. Onions are blooming left and right. Zucchini, squash, cantaloupe, nasturtiums, marigolds. Everything in here has just really rebounded from where it was just a few weeks ago. Like the surprisingly eager pumpkin seedlings over there, this garden is a success. We're very optimistic about what our yield will be like from this main kitchen garden. And while we are a little bit concerned about deer in the area, you saw one at the beginning of this video, so far they haven't broached the interior of this electric fence, at least not that we're aware of. Nothing's been eaten or chewed on. The only animal nibbling on things here in the garden is me. This onion's good. So what's going on with the greens beds, you might ask? Well, take a look for yourselves. As you can see here, most of the plants in these 3 beds don't look substantially different than they did a month ago. Most of the plants are sickly and stunted and really haven't grown much at all. Even the little greens that we've sown here really haven't popped up more than an inch above the soil. The problem is we treated these 3 beds the same way that we treated the main kitchen garden a few weeks ago when we tried to amend things. Blood meal, liquid nitrogen fertilizer. The only thing that we didn't throw down was mulch, and that was because we have a lot of these little green seedlings out here. But honestly, I don't know if mulch would have made much of a difference anyways. There's no way around it. These beds just aren't performing. Now, there's a few interesting things to note here. Number one, the soil in this area doesn't drain well at all. As you can see here, I don't know if you can hear that, but this spot where I'm pressing down below this mulch, it's still wet there. It's been a while since it's rained, and it still hasn't drained away the moisture. So that tells me that the drainage by these 3 greens beds is not good at all. The second thing to note here is the lack of sun that these 3 beds get. It's only, 4 in the afternoon right now, and already most of the beds are shaded out completely at this point. Now that's by design. When we initially set these beds up, we wanted them to only get partial sun throughout the day. Our experience in Michigan was that a lot of our greens would bolt out very early in the season because of all the sun they were getting. We found that, at least up there, when we put greens in partially shaded areas, they seemed to perform much better. So when we initially set these 3 beds up, that was our thinking. We want them to get partial shade so they won't bolt out as early and they'll be a lot more productive. Well, we were thinking that that was probably a fine tactic to take until we noticed one of the few spots that are actually very productive in these greens beds. As you can see right here, this patch of lettuce seems to be doing well. Now this is the most productive spot out of all 3 of these beds. It's also interesting to note that this spot right here, this corner, is the very last spot that receives sun during the day. As the sun sets over the house here in the west, this little corner gets the most sun out of all 3 of the beds. It's also interesting to note that this corner is the highest up out of all 3 of the beds, and therefore it probably has the best drainage. So that tells me 2 things. These greens beds need more sun, and they need less moisture. So what's the real takeaway here? Well, putting these beds here was a mistake. Now, what do we intend to do about it? I think honestly, after talking about it with Holly, I think we're gonna sacrifice everything that's in these beds and try and move them over here in this part of the garden, basically extend the kitchen garden a bit. Hopefully have them in place in this part of the garden, this extended part of the garden, to be able to plant some things in the fall. I know that a lot of people here will plant greens in the fall and they'll have very productive fall greens crops. It's going to be some work and some sacrifice too, but in the end I think it's definitely going to be worth it, and a project that I can hopefully accomplish here within the next few months, the next few weeks. Granted, we're going to have to wait for that silage tarp to get most of the grass in the new section of the garden, but again, it'll be worth it. Not every experiment is going to go the way that we planned it to here on the homestead, but that's part of the beauty of being able to work your own land, is you can make experiments like this. You can try out new things, and if something doesn't work, you can try it somewhere else, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So while it was a little discouraging having to deal with 3 essentially inert, dead garden beds, in the end we're excited about just moving them and actually being able to produce food in a new spot, and we fully intend on doing that. Anyways, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. Things are going to go wrong here and there. You're going to experience setbacks and failures, but if you look at them the right way, you can use them to your advantage. You can learn from them, you can grow from them, you can tweak things and make them better. That's what we're trying to do with our life here on the homestead. Until next time, guys, remember, as always, slowly, slowly.